Welcome back to my nursing classroom. In our previous discussions, we've talked about medication, source of medication, route of drug administration, and some apparatus we use in administering drugs. Today, we'll be talking about four topics: effect of drugs, system of drug measurement, storage of drugs on the ward, and factors affecting dose and action of drugs. Before I continue, make sure you subscribe to this channel, like and comment, so that in case there is any notification, you just get it on your phone, or any news, lectures, you just get the update on your phone, then you click it. Make sure you click on the bell as well. Now, to get into it, let's talk about effect of drugs on the body. Effect of drugs on the body. This, when we say effect of drugs, we mean in case you take in a drug, what are some of the things or some of the changes that will be going through the body. That's what I mean by saying effect of drugs. So drugs are being taken in order to cure, in order to prevent, in order to maintain a healthy life. So these drugs, these numerous drugs we have in the world, when you take them into your body, what effect do they have on your body? What changes goes on in the body? These are what we want to talk about this morning. Now, the first one we would like to talk about is the therapeutic effect. Therapeutic effect. When we say therapeutic effect, we mean the reason for which the drug is prescribed. The reason for which a drug is prescribed. For example, when you take in paracetamol, you are expecting that, let's say you have headache, fever, and you're expecting that this kind of paracetamol will cure the fever that you are having or reduce the fever. Then that is the therapeutic effect of the drug. So the therapeutic effect is the reason for which a drug is prescribed. That is the first effect of drugs. Now the next one is side effect. The side effect is not intended by the prescriber, meaning that, using paracetamol as an example, as we used earlier on, when you take paracetamol, you were expecting that your fever will reduce, your headache will go down, and all the things you'll be expecting will be going out of your body. But there may be a situation whereby when you take in paracetamol, you may not be able to sleep well, you may have some other effects on your body apart from what you were expecting. That's what I mean by saying side effects. So side effects are some of the effects that a drug may incur on your body, but that may be the main reason for taking in the drug. That's what I mean by saying side effect. And we talk about the next effect is tonicity. Tonicity. It results from overdose of injection or a drug intended for external use. When you say tonicity, we mean the number of solids in a particular solution. When the number of solids in a particular solution is higher, then it means that its tonicity is very high. And when a tonicity of a solution is very high, then it has the ability to draw fluid from the region of lower concentration to the region of higher concentration in osmosis principle. So when a drug is administered in overdose, then it has the ability to withdraw some of the fluid content in your body, and that effect too is as a result of the drug that has been administered. So the ability of a drug to draw fluid from your body in the case of external use, such as lotions and all the or other drugs that may have the ability to draw fluid from your body. Now we have allergic reaction. There is an autoimmunological reaction to a drug. When we take in a drug and your body sees the drug to be a foreign body that may not be part of the system, sometimes your body may fight against it, producing numerous number of antibodies and a whole lot. And when these kind of reactions goes on in the body, it gives you some signs and symptoms like pain in the body, severe headache, and a whole lot. So the body may fight against drug that may be taken into the body. When this happens, then we see that there is what allergic reaction. So allergic reaction is an autoimmunological reaction to a drug. When your immune system fights against a particular drug that has been taken into your body, is what I mean by saying allergic reaction. Now we have anaphylactic effect. Anaphylactic effect is a type of effect in a severe form of allergic reaction to a drug. When there can be a situation whereby the body will fight against a drug, as I said earlier on, but when we talk about anaphylactic effect, then we are talking about severe form of allergic reaction. Severe form of allergic reaction. This one leads to red puffy tongue, puffy face. It can even lead to shock. So that is anaphylactic effect. So the anaphylactic effect is a type of effect in severe form of allergic reaction to a drug. Now the next effect I would like to talk about is drug tolerance. It is an unusually low physiological response to drug, requiring increase in the dosage to maintain a given therapeutic effect. Drug tolerance comes as a result of taking a drug at regular intervals or frequently. When you continue to take in a drug at frequent intervals, your body will adjust to that particular drug, and you see that in the subsequent days to come, when you take in the same drug, your body won't have the same effect you used to get at previous days. But unless you increase the dose, for example, let's say you take in paracetamol, 1 gram paracetamol, that is 2 tablets of paracetamol, and your headache will subside or decrease, or it will go away. When you continue to take in paracetamol for your headache continuously, then it will get to a time that when you take in 1 gram of paracetamol, the kind of effect you used to have, that is your headache going away, will no more be there unless you take about 1.5 gram or 3 tablets of paracetamol. That's what I mean by saying drug tolerance. So drug tolerance is an unusual low physiological response to a drug, requiring increase in the dosage to maintain a given therapeutic effect. Cumulative effect. It is the effect of an increase in response to repeated doses of drug when the rate of administration exceeds the metabolism or excretion. When a drug is being administered at frequent intervals, which exceeds the metabolism rate or excretion rate, then it means that the drug is going to have multiple effects on the body, meaning that the effects that the drug will have on the body will increase because the one taken in previously is still in the system. So as a result of that, the body, the effect of the drug on the body will go high, That's what we mean by saying cumulative effect. For example, assuming lisinopril was administered to a hypertensive patient, and this drug was administered in frequent intervals exceeding the rate of metabolism and excretion, then it means that the blood pressure of the patient is going to drop drastically, since there has been a higher dose of this antihypertensive drug in the system. So that is what I mean by saying cumulative effect. Now, the next one is idiosyncratic effect. Idiosyncratic effect. That is when a drug produces a completely different effect from the normal one. It is over response or under response of a drug. So when you take in a drug and the drug gives you a different kind of effect from what you expect, either in a form of higher response or lower response, then we say that it is idiosyncratic. For example, taking antihypertensive drug as an example, when you're taking, let's say, lisinopril, and this kind of lisinopril reduces your blood pressure frequently, and we know that, let's say, one tablet of lisinopril is supposed to decrease your blood pressure from, let's say, 150 130 to 120 180, and this same drug was administered and it drops the blood pressure from 150 130 to 180 60, then it means that there has been a idiosyncratic effect, meaning the drug produced a completely different effect from the normal one, and it is over response or under response of a drug. The next one I would like to talk about is drug interaction. It occurs when the administration of drug alters the effects of another drug that is administered before, at the same time, or after the drug, and vice versa. When you take in a drug and let's say you took the two different kind of drug at the same time, or maybe one before the other, and these kind of two drugs kind of cause the effect of one to either be low or high, then we say that there has been drug interaction. So it occurs when administration of drug alters the effect of another drug that is administered before, at the same time, or after the drug, and vice versa. Now the last one I'd like to talk about is as the effect of drug is synergistic effect. So when you say synergy, it means that something being able to work effectively in the presence of another, something being able to work effectively at the presence of another, meaning that it will occur when a drug administered before, at the same time, or after another drug increases the action of the former, and vice versa. So let's say you're taking a particular drug and later you take in another one, and that's one you take in either before or the after causes the effect of the other drug to increase. In this case, to increase in its effect, then we are saying that there is synergistic effect. Meaning that the drug is able to work higher or effectively when, as a result of the presence of the other drug. That's what I mean by saying synergistic effect. One thing I would like you to note is that the synergistic effect is always positive, meaning it's always in higher effectiveness, and drug interaction is both positive and negative. Drug interaction is both positive and negative. So these are some of the effects of drug on the body. Now let's come to the system of drug measurement. The system of drug measurement, we have three. One is metric, the second one is household, and the third one is apothecaries. Now let's go into it. The metric system, these are measured in milliliters, microgram, kilogram, and gram. The metric system uses grams to measure weight and liters to measure volume. So the metric system are measured in milliliters, microgram, kilogram, gram. So we have 1 gram of paracetamol, 1 liter of normal saline or dextrose saline. So these kind of measurements we use normally. Nowadays we've been using 1 gram, 1 liter, 1 liters, 1 milliliter, sorry, 500 milliliters, and those kind of measurements you've been using are what we mean by saying metric system. So prefixes are used to indicate the number of grams and letters. For example, weights are measured in grams. So we have 1 kilogram equal to 1000 gram, 1 gram equal to 1000 milligram, 1 milligram equal to 1000 microgram. Now we have in liters, we have volume. Liters are used to measure the volume. So we have 1 liter equal to 1000 milliliters, and 1000 cubic centimeters is also equal to 1000 milliliters. 1 milliliter is equal to 1 cubic centimeter. So these are some of the measurements we have in the metric system. So that is one system of measuring drug. The next one is household. The household measurement system is the system that most of us use at home, usually in the kitchen. So the household system uses measurements for drops. So 1 drop, 2 drop, teaspoon, whereby you take a kind of medication using spoon, tablespoon, cup, pint, and gallons. All of these measurements are household measurements. Now the last one of the drug measurement system or system of drug measurement is apothecaries. It's a system used for measuring and weighing drugs and solution, brought to the United States from England during the colonial period. It has now been replaced by the metric system. So its units are the grain, scalpel, dram, ounce, and pounds. So these measurements were used later days, and now they have been replaced by the metric system. So they were the metric, the grain, scalpel, drams, ounce, and pounds. Fractions are used to designate portions of units of measure. Example: 1/4 grain is written grain 1 out of 4. So these are the three systems of drug measurement we have. Drug measurement, but nowadays we've been using the metric system and the household system. Now let's come to storage of drugs on the ward. Storage of drugs on the ward. In the hospital ward, measures are taken to safeguard drugs and lotions to prevent accidents. So these are the way drugs are being stored in the ward to prevent accidents. In the case that in such uh, by labeling the type of drugs that are being stored in here, and those that are being applied on the skin, those that are internal, and those that are very dangerous or poisonous. So these drugs, all of these drugs are being labeled in or are being kept in a particular cupboard to prevent accidents. For this reason, separate cupboards are used for storing drugs, and these cupboards are kept under lock. The cupboards are measured 1, 2, and 3 for identification purposes. Now, what are being stored in these cupboards? So when you say cupboard 1, what kind of drugs are being stored there? Cupboard 2, what drugs are being stored? And then cupboard 3. Let's go into it. But before we go into that, guidelines for storage of drugs. Now, 1. Store drugs in 3 cupboards and keep them under lock always. On the word, these are some of the guidelines for storing drugs. 1 is store drugs in 3 cupboards. Keep them under lock always. 2. Keep medication and lotion used for external use in cupboard 1. So, lotions and external use medications are being stored in cupboard 1. Then, medications for internal use, for example, the tablets and all those that are internal in cupboard 2. And then lastly, store drugs and medication which contain dangerous drugs in cupboard 3. Store drugs and medication which contain dangerous drugs in cupboard 3. Now, cupboard 1. This cupboard is used to store drugs and lotions for external use only. Example include methylated spirit, Dettol, Savlon, calamine lotion. So if any of these lotions contain poisonous substance, they are collectively collected from the pharmacy under special condition as follows. The bottle should have rigid surfaces. So all external medications such as methylated spirit, Dettol, Savlon, calamine lotion are being kept in cupboard 1. But we have some that are very poisonous, and these ones are supposed to be taken from the pharmacy. But before you take these drugs from the pharmacy, you must make sure that they are under these conditions. 1 is the bottle should have rigid surfaces. They should have deep colors such as brown, blue, and green. They should be labeled poison in red to prevent accident. They should also be labeled clearly for external use only. So these are some of the things you must consider or do when a drug that are used externally contain poisonous substances. Okay, that is cupboard 1. Now cupboard 2. The cupboard 2 stores mixtures, pills, tablets, capsules, and powders that are controlled by law. These drugs can only be obtained by the public with signing stamp prescription. So, as I said earlier, on cupboard 2 store internal drugs that are used internally. So, it include the pills, capsules, tablets, powders, and they are being controlled by law. It doesn't mean that these drugs are on the world, they should be given out just like that. Before someone can take these drugs, they should have a prescription with sign and stamp. Okay, so that is cupboard 2. Then cupboard 3 contain dangerous drugs, and they are kept in this cupboard. They are called dangerous drugs because they cause addiction, and they are referred to as BDA. So drugs that can cause addiction such as heroin, cocaine, and the others are being kept in cupboard 3. And an act was passed in 1919 on its manufacturing, prescription in storage, and this was called the Dangerous Drug Act, that is the DDA. Example of these drugs are pethidine, cocaine, morphine, and the opium. So these drugs can cause addiction and they are being stored in cupboard 3. By law, these drugs are given to patients on a doctor's prescription, which have clearly stated the date, patient's name, the drug, the dosage, and how often it should be prepared. The ward in charge is responsible for these drugs when they are received from the dispensary. So the in charge signs, and the drugs are kept under lock in a special cupboard known as the DDA cupboard, Dangerous Drug Act cupboard. The keys are kept by the in charge or the deputy. Accurate records are kept on the use of drugs, and the pharmacist can check from time to time. So because these drugs can cause addiction, they are kept under lock always, and the keys are kept by the in charges, the in charge or the deputy. And before someone can take these drugs, there should be prescription, the date, the frequent, and then the dose of which is supposed to be given to the patient by the physician. So it is important that 2 nurses or 1 registered nurse check on the drug before it is administered. A special book called DDA book is kept, and the following information are entered in the DDA book: the patient name, name of the drug, dosage, time given, the prescriber, the name of the nurse giving the drug, and the name of the nurse who checked it. So because these drugs are very dangerous, before they can be administered, there should be a second party to observe that the drug is being administered. There should be some kind of things to write in the book, in the DDA book, which include the patient's name, the name of the drug, the dosage, time given, the prescriber or the one who served the drugs, the name of the nurse giving the drugs, and the name of the nurse who checked it. So all of these must be considered when giving dangerous drugs or drugs that are being kept in cupboard 3. Now, lastly, in today's topic, let's talk about factors affecting the dose and action of drugs. Factors affecting the dose and action of drugs. So when we take in a drug, we are expecting that the drug will fight against SAR infections or will cure some conditions we may be having in the body. But what determines the number of drug or the dose that we are supposed to take in? A same drug may be given to 2 different patients, but one may take in higher dose than the other. What will be some of the factors that may determine these ones? This is what we would like to know. Now, the first one is age. In general, children require smaller dose than adults. Either Young formula or Clark's formula can be used for calculating the dose for children, but the formula based on body surface is more reliable. So age is the first thing, or it's one of the things that affects dose and action of the drug. So normally small dose of drugs are given to children than adults. Sex, this is particularly important in the case of treatment with sex hormones. For example, female adults generally require smaller dose than male due to presence of more fat in their body. So sex is the second thing that affects dose and action of drugs. Body weight. The dose calculation for abnormally thin and or obese patients are required to calculate on basis of body weight. So in case you want to administer a drug to a patient who is very thin or very obese, then we must consider their body weight before we administer, or else when we try to administer the normal dose to these kind of patients, let's say to the thing, then it means that there's going to be higher effects on the person. So we must consider the weight of the individual, although the person has gone enough, but still we have to consider the weight. And also when we administer the normal dose to someone who is obese, then we are going to have lower effects on the body after the drug is being administered. So we must consider the weight of these patients before we administer drugs to them. So body weight is one of the factors that affect the dose and action of drugs. The fourth one is severity of disease. How severe is the disease can determine the dose that we expect to give to the person. So it's a common experience that dull headache may be relieved by a single tablet of aspirin, whereas severe headache may necessitate administration of 2 to 3 tablets of the same drug. So the severity of the disease may affect the number of or the dose of the drug that will be taken by the patient. The higher the severity, then the higher the number of dose, or the higher the dose that will be administered to the patient. Now the fifth one is health and nutrition. What is the status of the individual? What is the health status, the nutritional status of the individual? These kind of status may also determine the number of, or we may determine the dose that will be given to the individual. Now, so debilitated and anemic patients are in general more sensitive to toxic effects of drugs, and hence they are given smaller doses. So the health status of the individual will determine the number of doses that will be given. Since anemic patients and debilitated patients are generally sensitive to toxic effects of drugs, then we have to give them smaller doses. So the health and nutritional status of the individual may also affect the dose and action of the drug. Now, pathological state. If the organs through which biotransformation or excretion take place are diseased, then smaller doses is indicated. For example, when a patient is suffering from hepatitis, and since we know that the liver is responsible for biotransformation, and the kidneys too are responsible for excretion of these drugs that are being taken into the body, and this patient is suffering from hepatitis, then it means that when we give in higher doses, these drugs may not be biotransformed or may not be detoxified in the system, so they will be kept in the system or may not work effectively. So we have to give them smaller dose, or assuming patient is suffering from kidney problems or kidney failure, and we give in higher doses, then it means that there is going to be a problem arising from low levels of excretion of these drugs as a result of the fact that the kidneys are not functioning well. So the pathological state of the individual may also affect the dose that will be administered to the individual and the effect of the drug on the individual. So that is the next point to consider. Now the next one is tolerance. So as I said in the effects of drug tolerance, Tolerance can be acquired as a result of repeated administration of some drugs. Example, morphine, heroin, and cocaine. So as an individual keeps on taking this kind of drugs, morphine, heroin, and cocaine, they are being um, they adapt to it. Like it becomes part of them. I mean, to the extent that when they don't get these drugs, they don't feel normal. So tolerance can acquire as a result of repeated administration of some drugs. So these one too can cause the effect of, or will affect the dose that will be given to the individual. Since these drugs can cause tolerance, then we are expecting that we give low levels or low doses to them, not higher doses. Now, the next thing to consider is the route of administration. In general, the rapidity of absorption of drug decreases or increases depending on the route of administration. So in case we want to administer a drug to an individual through the oral route, then we expect that we must give higher doses as a result of biotransformation, or the effect of the enzymes in the stomach or in the intestine, so that by the time that it will reach the systemic circulation, we might have a normal level of dose reaching the systemic circulation. And if we are to give a drug to using the intra or the parenteral route, then you must give them normal doses, since this one is reaching the systemic circulation directly. Since it is reaching the systemic circulation directly, then we must give the normal doses in order to prevent higher effects of these drugs. So the route of drug administration is also another point to consider, or another point that affects the dose and effects of drug. So time and frequency of drug administration. Biological half-life of drug, that is the time required for the blood levels to drop down to 50% of the initial peak level, is the main factor governing frequency of drug administration. So when the half-life of a drug is about 2 hours, then we expect that by 4 hours another dose of the same drug will be administered in order to prevent low levels in the blood. So this half-life effect, or this half-life, will determine the number and the dose that will be administered to the individual. So that is the time and frequency of drug administration. May also affect the dose and the effect of drug on the individual. Now, allergy, for example, penicillin may produce anaphylactic shock, that is sudden fall of blood pressure in allergic patients, but not in normal patients. So saying when a drug can cause allergic effects on an individual, then we expect that we give low doses to the individual rather than higher doses, or not at all to the individual. So when there is allergic effect when a drug is able to cause allergic effect on an individual, these drugs are being administered in low doses, and that is another point or thing to consider. So this brings us to the end of today's lectures. If you have any question, you can type it and send it to the comment section, and all your questions will be answered. Thank you very much. In our next discussion, we'll be talking about how to calculate doses of drugs. Bye bye.